Morning, all. Okay, so we're going to talk about Nick Backstrom today. Nick Backstrom got hip resurfacing done on his left hip, and there is no timetable for his return. Now, if you look at historically with NHLers getting this done, the prognosis is not great. So, Ryan Kessler had it in 2019, did not return to play in the National Hockey League after that. Ev Jovanovski had it in 2013, played 37 games in a return after that, and then he retired. So again, the precedent is there, and it's not an encouraging one for Backstrom. Now, getting hip resurfacing is, and I looked this up before doing this video, it is an alternative to a hip replacement. Hip replacement is more for older people who may not be as active. This is seen as a good option for younger, more active people. Backstrom is 34 years of age, so plenty of time left for him. And so you don't want to be giving him a surgery that's potentially going to make his standard of living worse. And hip replacement can. So hip resurfacing, again, the odds of him coming back to play, I would probably ballpark it as like 50-50 because Jovanovski did, Kessler didn't. But if he does, odds are he won't be the same Nick Backstrom. Now, the reason he had to get the hip resurfacing is because his hip's been bugging him for a while. He missed the first 2 months of this season because of his hip. And he wasn't as effective either. He had 6 goals, 15 assists, 21 points in 47 games. And it's one of those things that's noteworthy. Backstrom had been one of the best centers in the league at the top of his game. And this year it just wasn't working. So Kuznetsov was left to click with Ovechkin. And just the general feeling of the Washington Capitals this year seemed to be a little different. The one thing is that if they're not going to have Backstrom at all this coming season, it takes a team that's already looking at potentially having to do some kind of a retool or rebuild in the near future, and I think it kind of accelerates it. So if Backstrom's not going to play, if that's that, the one thing about it is this. He has a $9.2 million cap hit, which means that once we get into the season, that frees that money up. He'd go on LTIR, and it frees that money up. And if they know that they're not going to have to worry about him coming back and going over the cap, they can go out and spend money. And this is where LTIR is supposed to work. This is what it's for, is for a team to say, hey, so we've got this guy who's making this amount of money. He's not playing for us this year. Can we replace him? And according to the salary cap system, you absolutely can. The one thing with that, though, with LTIR is that it doesn't apply over the summer, and you can only go, I think it's 10% above the cap during the summer. You can't go above that. But anyways, for Backstrom, it puts him on LTIR, and if he doesn't play again, then he would be on LTIR until 2025. If you retire, you get penalties, the team gets penalties, yada yada. But no movement clause is in place for this season. So if he was to get sent to, say, Arizona, let's just, for instance, Arizona says, well, we'll take on the contract, then he'd have to agree to that trade to Arizona. And that, I think, would absolutely prove he's not coming back. He has a 15-team no-trade list for the following 2 seasons on the contract. So they could trade him to a team that's not on the list, but that would be next season, not this season coming up, but the one after 2023, 2024. So what happens to their depth chart? Well, it takes a hit, and I'm really only concerned with down the middle. Wilson's not a fifth-line winger. I just grabbed a depth chart. It didn't have Wilson on it, so I threw Wilson on at the bottom. But yeah, Kuznetsov now is the number 1 center in Washington, but he was last year anyways, and he's been slowly taking over that role from Backstrom. And so he'd play with Ovechkin and with Oshie. Maybe throw Mantha on that line, throw Wilson on that line, whoever. But then down the middle, you have Eller, Dowd, McMichael. Now, the interesting thing to me is this. Connor McMichael, I thought, played relatively well this year. Maybe you give him a look at the number 2 center spot. Maybe you see if it'll work. And then if it doesn't, then you look to make a move. But because it's Washington, because you want to win now, there might be pressure to make a move this summer when it comes to free agency. Now, the other option could be maybe you keep Marcus Johansson. Johansson easily could be fit into this. Their cap space for next year right now reads as $8,973,334, according to Cap Friendly. You add $9.2 million to that, that's about $18 million in cap space because you wouldn't have to worry about Backstrom. So they could all of a sudden be players for, say, Johnny Gaudreau. And I'm not saying that Gaudreau goes there or they sign him, but they could. They could go out and say, you know what, we're going to go out and get a big name. We don't feel like Backstrom's going to come back for us this year, and they could be in the market for a big name. And again, that's if they feel that they're still a contender. Now, they lost in the first round against Florida, took 6 games. They had an advantage in that series, and then Florida roared back and they won it. So do you look at that and say, okay, so they almost had the President's Trophy winners, down, and then they lost it, so they're close? Or do you look at it and say, they're the number 2 wild card. They went out in the first round again this year. That's been a recurring theme since they won the Cup, basically. And so do you look at that and say, it's time to do some sort of a reset, and yeah, we'll give McDavid, they wish. McMichael, we'll give McMichael that shot, and Connor McMichael is going to drive me insane because it's so close to McDavid. Anyways, but yeah, we'll see what they do, and whether or not they move somebody else up. Protas was very impressive during the season when he was up. Then he gets hurt. And of course, in the prospects system, the team system, the prospects list, I swear I'll get there. Hendrix Lapierre. Hendrix Lapierre could very well come in and get himself a job this year. And it is the one upside to an injury like this, is that it's the off season. There's lots of time before next season starts. I think it's 114 days from today. And so they have a lot of time to figure this out. Do you believe in Lapierre? Do you throw him in there? Do you believe in McMichael? Throw him into a top 6 role? What do you do? Do you use that money then to keep Schultz on the blue line, to keep Larson, to keep Johansson? Or do you say, no, we're going to go out and get new players? And then, of course, don't forget their RFAs. They have Samsonov and Vanacek that they have to get signed. Who knows? Maybe you keep Copley around. Maybe you trade Vanacek to pick up a forward. Right? So it's going to be interesting to see what they do this coming off season. I know their off season started when they got eliminated by Florida, but it always feels like things change as soon as that Stanley Cup's been awarded. Then the GMs really get to work on all their trades, even though they could make them now. The Caps could make a move right now if they wanted to, but GMs generally wait until basically it's the draft where I think we're going to see things happen. So we'll see what the Washington Capitals decide to do, because losing Backstrom is huge. And I mean, he's had a career of over 1,000 games. He does have the Cup ring. Backstrom's one of those ones that if you look at his career, you can make the argument for the Hall of Fame. And it may be a situation where you hope that Backstrom and Ovechkin go in together, because as much as Ovechkin's goal scoring is fantastic, so is Backstrom's ability to set him up. So while Kuznetsov takes that over, Kuznetsov's been very good at setting up goals for Ovechkin as well. They'll miss Backstrom. They absolutely will, because even this year when Backstrom didn't quite look like Backstrom, he was still very effective at times, and he had some pretty good games in there. And just his experience, his veteran leadership. So my guess is Backstrom may have played his final game, and then my guess as well would be the Washington Capitals would offer him an assistant coaching role, whatever role he might want in the organization, I think would be offered to him. He was always a very intelligent player. And, he might very well be somebody that you could see moving up through coaching ranks if he went there. Hopefully, he does come back and play, and hopefully he's very good. But there's a lot of hopefullys in there. And honestly, hip resurfacing, it's a pretty major deal, and it takes a while. What I was reading was that it's 6 weeks before you're really up and walking around, and even at that point, you're still probably on crutches. So, all the best to Nick Backstrom in his recovery. And all the best to the Washington Capitals figuring out how to navigate this and what they're going to do next. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.